Hi, I'm Brad Coleman. I'm the campus pastor at Christ Church Highland Park. And this is a part of our series in spiritual practices where each day we're talking about a practice that has a transformative power in our life. And this week we're talking about worship, and in particular, the corporate worship or group worship that takes place on Sunday mornings as we sing together. That's a spiritual practice that actually transforms our interior life. And I'd like for you to begin thinking differently about that part of our Sunday services. I want to read to you a passage from Ephesians chapter 3. Paul is praying for the church at Ephesus, and in praying for them, he's also praying for us. He says in verse 17, "And I pray that you, being rooted and established in love, may have power together with all the saints to grasp how wide and long and high and deep is the love of Christ, and to know this love that surpasses knowledge, that you may be filled to the measure of all the fullness of God." That is such a powerful passage, one of my favorites in the scriptures. I love this phrase that Paul prays that we would know this love that surpasses knowledge. I used to wonder about that. How is it that we can know something that surpasses knowledge? Is Paul just saying that the love of Christ is so big, it's really hard to wrap our minds around? It's hard to wrap our arms around. And he's praying that we would know this thing that is so big and so deep and long. But I think that Paul is saying that he's praying that we would know this thing that actually surpasses knowledge. In fact, it's outside of the realm of knowledge. It's beyond cognitive knowledge. In fact, it's a different kind of knowing. It surpasses explicit knowledge, knowing about things. This is not just knowing about how big the love of Christ is. This is a knowledge that seeps deep into our heart. It's not knowing on a head level. It's knowing on a heart level. Last week we talked about this idea of tacit knowledge, or what's also known as implicit knowledge. It's a different kind of knowing. It creates a foundational, transformational kind of experience for us when we know something so deeply that it goes from our head down deep into our heart, that it changes the way that we think, the way that we experience our life, the way that we live. This is what Paul is praying for, that we would know something so deeply that it surpasses explicit knowledge. Utilitarian language is what's used to give us explicit knowledge. In other words, facts, knowing about things. But beauty is something that enters into us. Utilitarian language enters through the front door, right? Beauty is something that hits us in a different place than that. It enters into us kind of from the back door and surprises us. It enters into us and goes into a heart level, more of an emotional level. This is the power of art, of music, of story. It doesn't just communicate information. It communicates through an experience or through an emotional kind of communication. And it's the power of music. It's why we use music on Sunday mornings to worship God. It engages us on a different level than the sermon does. The sermon enters through the front door. The music and poetry of the songs can enter through the back door and hit us at a heart level. This is why the psalmists use poetic language to worship God. Listen just to Psalm 104 as an example. I'll just read the first 10 verses. "Praise the Lord, O my soul. O Lord my God, you are very great. You are clothed with splendor and majesty. He wraps himself in light as with a garment. He stretches out the heavens like a tent and lays the beam of his upper chambers on their waters. He makes the clouds his chariot and rides on the wings of the wind. He makes winds his messengers, flames of fire his servants. He set the earth on its foundations. It can never be moved. You, Lord, covered it with the deep as with a garment. The waters stood above the mountains, but at your rebuke, the waters fled. At the sound of your thunder, they took flight. They flowed over the mountains. They went down into the valleys, to the place you assigned for them. You set a boundary they cannot cross. Never again will they cover the earth. He makes springs pour water into ravines. It flows between the mountains. This is poetic language, speaking of God's presence, His beauty, His greatness, flowing, immersing us like waters. This is why when we sing, our songs use poetic language, because poetic language can express to us and through us truths that are deeper than mere facts. When we enter into corporate worship, when we enter into worship through singing as a church, I would love for you to begin to recognize that this is a transformative act that is hitting us in a different place than the language of the sermon is hitting us. The sermon is causing a transforming of our mind. It's renewing our minds so that we think differently. But as we worship together, it's transforming at a heart level our loves and our desires. So my prayer is that you would enter into the corporate worship in our church a little bit differently as a result of thinking about it in this way. God bless you.